Check, baby, 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, baby, 1, 2, 3. Hey guys, I'm broadcasting to you from Danbury, Connecticut on a little plot next to Upper Cohanza Lake that we like to call Addie's Acres. I'm here today to read you a bunch of poems from my MFA thesis, which is entitled Some Days My Body is So Beautiful, I Can't Believe I Get to Live Here. Since it's COVID and we don't really have any time limits, I'm just going to speed read the whole book. No, I'm just fucking with you. I'm going to read you a bunch of poems, though. Some poems about dogs, some poems about drugs, some poems about childhood, some poems about childlessness, some poems about a messed up body and disability. And we're going to try to end up somewhere in the neighborhood of hope. I'm probably going to mess up a lot, so please bear with me and let's get going. The end of my brother. He couldn't walk, eat, and my father didn't tell me until after he put my brother to sleep. The kindness I never wanted, still don't. Take it back. There was a hole the size of a paw print in my chest, so I went outside to give my eyes something to do. I remember it was hard to cry, as though the news had blown out all moisture and made of my body Oklahoma. There was something about the sky, the way it bled, dimming over the horizon where my brother went to bark and never came back. Pass me a beer, I said to someone who wasn't there. I just want to hold it till all the cold is gone. And I wasn't talking about the can. Too warm, we call it, when the inner and outer match. Imagine Florida and 2 inches of fur. Imagine a dog who saved my father from alcohol and despair. He was my brother, my guardian, my teacher, my guide, and he raised me on a savage hunger for every morsel of this world. We drooled fuck yes at the dog biscuits, the only food left in the house. So dry, so dry. Maybe that's what my grief recalled. I used to throw my head back and bark when I was young. Rascal and I had long, late talks. When I was 14, we lived alone together for 9 months. The animal, just one of 7 kingdoms we inhaled. When he was 14, he sniffed the woman who put the needle in his neck. I wasn't there. I've yipped a bit, but haven't howled at the moon since. The low rumble of a growl, however, has never left the spit-worn nest of emptiness in my throat. The next poem's about childhood. Sometimes vision withers on the vine. Electricity was a luxury in that clapboard house. 3 rooms and 10,000 fleas. Flowed as scarce as running water because crack was more alluring than the bills. 25-cent mac and cheese every night for years. A burn the size of a thumb on the dull red plastic bowl. Hand-me-downs, barefoot in ditches, my finger tracing the edges of ringworm's beautiful bruise. For baths, we ran a hose from the neighbor's faucet, and through the window, by the dim light of the lamp, I watched Mrs. Morrissey take off her bra. Once, 3 hits into the pipe, my father's friend set candle after candle in the center of his palm, lit it and stared until the flame went out, wax spilling through his fingers onto the floor. I sometimes wonder what he saw in that dance of light. And sometimes I don't have to wonder. I see it too. The shiny forehead, the hollow eyes, my mother's chin, my father's jaw, my lips moving soundlessly while the ghost of the living body makes his rounds, peering into each version of my future where nothing happens, and the only thing left to do is turn out the light. The next poem is about disability. How much more I can take. By the time I was 24, I had 10 herniated discs, slept 3 hours a night, felt like I was a stabbing board, laid on the concrete during lunch, drank a 5th each night, smoked 3 blunts a day, which barely took the edge off. Passed out at midnight, was up at 3. The doctor who discovered my disorder, nameless early degeneration, asked if I'd fallen out of a building. We laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that makes you wince. I had the back of a 50-year-old construction worker, pleaded for help, but spinal medicine in the 21st century is fucking medieval. Painkillers, steroids, fusion, they put metal rods through either side of your vertebrae and screw them in place to stop the bones from rubbing together, ideally to stop them from pinching nerves or compressing leaky discs, which tend to blow in a chain reaction, dominoes of disease that go goodbye dancing, hello bad sex, not even that. I like to think of the discs as stars exploding in slow motion, or eggs that some poor creatures are trying to peck their way out of, my pain, their only path to existence. It's both torturous and fascinating, and I want to help. I want them to make it. I do. The next poem, since we're already here, is about disability again. Pain, 8 on a scale out of 10. Some days I never make it out of my head, that coal-eyed melon where all my dreams crumble and drift into the weeds of sticks. The impinged nerves crack their whips within my animal pelts and my tongue plays dead, afraid of how much more it would hurt to cry out. But some cries cannot be stifled. Some hurts get worse before they get better, if they get better, if. Some nights, the sleeve of me seizes and I hear in my writhing the devil's laugh. He's a son of a bitch, but I don't even have enough left in me to hate him. Let him have this. Let him gnaw me past care and bone. There's nothing here but hurt, and I don't want it. I want to close the eyes of my eyes, stuff the blown world in a sack, throw it over my shoulder, and slip between 2 ticks of the pulse, leaving all the arguments of the flesh to cancel one another out. The next few poems are about my life with my service dog, Addie. She's a Labrador, a chocolate Labrador, and an Irish setter mix, and she is, I think, one of the best things that has ever happened to me. She's absolutely changed my life, made me a better person, probably saved my marriage, and the beating heart of this book, as my mentor, Craig Morgan-Tycher, says, is the section about her. The music we are. This morning, the snow blew off the limbs in a fine mist of sparrows who pecked at the air and disappeared. Addie and I descended the hill, my eye sockets on fire, her shoulders sore. The wind played the pines like violins, and I wanted to join them. But the music we are, I couldn't access the scale. The sound was its beauty, but not how it worked. Looking was no better than holding a mirror against a mirror. Taste was the tongue trying to describe the taste of itself. Touch asked whether the subject was the feeler or the felt. Smell came closest, every other sense commandeered into its service. Addie lost the deer tracks in the powder for a moment. She stood hovering until she caught the scent and her whole body whipped into its trail, as if she were the thrust at the tip of God's brush, satisfying the yearn in the air. Into the dark. Every year the cherry trees fatten with brag. Every year we return. Addie presses her nose into my palm for a treat. On each kernel of popcorn is the scent of my heart. Raw in my hand, she'd eat it with haste. I hate cold days, but I pray for them so I can watch her sparkle in the nip. The daggers of my spine come for me, and she rests her head in my lap to soften the stab. Her worn teeth make me wince. I check the muzzle in her gray and wish it back. I rehearse her death in my mind too often. I am rehearsing my own death in hers. I don't want to go before her. I want her nose, the chocolate nose that can lift into the air and scan the placement and history and hurt of everything. To smell my hand on her head as she closes her eyes and closes her heart. And I let myself follow her into the dark. Redeeming the invitations. So little snow, it felt like bouts of dandruff salting the ground. The lake froze, but even Addie's 68 pounds broke through. She sensed it happening. She leaped from the cracking ice and landed on the bank, tail wagging. Seeing it, someone pulled the string on the light bulb in my chest. No wonder the ticks love her. No wonder I follow her lead and rub my face in the snow. Would be spontaneous, but I'm selecting the medium. I don't have the courage to rub my face in the dirt. She wakes me in the middle of the night and I get up, groggy but glad to take her out. I'll complain in the morning, but I'm storing these moments as presents for when she's gone. I'll take them out, sniff them over, and cry. Who else would greet the 3 a.m. wind like an old friend come to visit, throw herself into its arms? Sleep is for the dead, she says. There's more to this day than poems and pie. She's approaching 80 in dog years, but she lives as if she's 35. I think it's partially for my benefit. She sees me in her rear view, unsteady at the wheel, and knows she still has a lot to teach me about aging, about ignoring it, about how to throw my body, even when it fails me, even when it hurts like hell, headlong into joy. This is the last one of the Addie section, and it's called A Walk with Addie. Addie found the strange scat full of fish scales again, on the peninsula where the beavers murder the trees, eating the bark, the sap rolling down the exposed wood like tears. Addie found the scat and, unlike the deer and goose coop, she gobbles faster than I can say no. This she wanted to roll in, to embed herself in the scales, the scat, the scent. Imagine being a creature with a nose so strong you could smell a piece of crust 200 yards away, and being so enthralled by the waft of shit, your first response is to enter it. She rolled and rolled, sneezing irrepressible sneezes of joy. Then she stood and shook briefly, and all of it fell. She trotted on, and I felt fortunate to be taught by her, to witness the embodiment of an infatuation one dives into like a second skin and then leaves behind, head down, already on the scent of the many infatuations ahead. I think I live in my head the way she lives in her nose, the way I roll around in the perfume of an idea which slowly fades, the faint aroma lingering in my thoughts throughout the day. An idea like we're helping the earth know herself. And in exchange, she's gifting us intimacy, consciousness, the experience of being everything in sight and in smell. I'd like to live in the part of Addie that processes smell for an hour, the part that can read the air, the way I hear the earth thinking my thoughts, revealing the shape and scent of comprehension, the size of the beaver, the fish become scales. I close my eyes, wanting only to linger in this communion while I can. Addie and I climb a hill and sit on a rock overlooking Eureka Lake. Geese honk their little notes of gruel from the water. The earth hands me a heartbeat and I hand Addie a treat, and the way she eats it is gratitude. The way I watch her eat it is gratitude. The wind speaks and we nod. We talk of our hike and our fondness for each other without saying a word. I don't know about you, but I think it's time to crack the beer. All right, next poem's where basically I show you how messed up I am. Petty theft. It started as baseball cards and candy bars, money from my father's wallet, protein bars on a health kick. Eventually, my friends and I walked into a grocery store, loaded up on beer and ice cream, and walked out, calm as day, as if being alive in need of sugar and stupefaction was payment enough. When I drove across the country and ran out of money, I'd approach a state line, fill up, and haul ass. believing the trooper couldn't book me on his neighbor's turf. I was lucky, never arrested, never shot, never killed. Once or twice I stole a heart. That fucked me up. As soon as I had it in my hands, I wanted to put it back, but you couldn't do that without hurting the person you took it from. Later, it was closed from thrift stores, a book from a writing center inscribed by one of my holy influences, Monsieur Valery. A theft I'm most proud of. I will never repent. A girlfriend goaded me into my lowest, CDs from my father's truck, which I pawned for a couple of bucks a pop. Music, the one thing in my father's life that wasn't drugs, depression, and skull-crushing drudgery. The theft I wish amongst my deepest wishes that I could take back. A little time on the clock, you bet. Then karma played her hand. My identity was lifted one night from my pocket, drunk, asleep on the train. My reincarnation was a bastard. He stole a dog and a car, got slapped with a felony, used my social security number to tarnish my good name. As long as he had good cause and took good care of the dog, I wish him good health. If not, may an intestinal parasite gut him to death. I worked and I stole, more of one than the other, which depended on the day. Somewhere along the way, I formed a philosophy. Earning is good, finding is better, sharing the best, belonging the bestest. Nothing I ever loved was purely the product of money or theft. And nothing I ever touched belonged to me more than I belonged to it, and it to the belonging in which all things fight and make up. To be at home in the earth's pocket, where I've always been, a unicorn nugget, collecting lint, casting sparks. To realize that and feel it, what else could an old thief want? Next poem takes us back into disability a little bit, but with a side of surrealism. Side effect of a hip replacement. There was a balled up napkin in my hip. It was a nest where a bird came limping to sing the 3 songs he knew how to tie in little knots of lightning and die. I called him Fred, a handful of fire to warm my bones to. And when the bone caved, when metal marched into my hip to replace it, Fred sang himself out of himself like a phantom through the tungsten. And the metal remembered its old life, before the shelf, before the mine, back in the earth's crust, or tongued by lava, hungry for the arrow, the spear tip, the microscope, the microchip, the bullets aimed at the president. Fuck me. Fred sang like he was giving birth to himself. My hip flamed like the earth come to claim it all hurts as parts of herself. And I sat all night and sweated, lightheaded through the bed in what thus far has been one of life's 3 or 4 greatest highs. Speaking of getting high, the next one's called A Little Line of Humankind. Any idiot can overdose or throw his life away, or abstain, i.e. throw his life away. It takes talent to get high for years on end and still hold your shit together. A little bump, a little bag that could be laid out in a single line is made to last all week. Practice makes pleasure. There is no such thing as never. You think you don't do drugs, but sensation demands it. Chemical intake, biological response. If one gets high, we all do. If one bottoms out, if one recovers, if one wakes up with his stomach pumped, he probably won't remember how it happened. None of us remembers how we happened, but we're getting high. And what's more, we're stimuli in consciousness, a little line on the mirror of life where if you hold still and look closely, you can see the thin film of condensation forming as the earth leans in to finish us off. The next poem is an attempt to approach something like reverence, praise, a great care for creation and everything within it. my favorite sweater. The moths have come and gone again another season, left portals in my coats and sweaters. I hope they had a good meal, that the relics of sweat didn't cause them too much indigestion. They even sucked on my favorite, a third-hand green, the color of pine, thick as a blanket. The goat's right up against me as the cold tries to stick its hand into my chest. I hope they ate well enough to bear another generation without the hunger and suffering too many have known. Another hand would hunt them down and smack the light from their lamps, but today, as the Christmas sun makes its 5-minute visit through my north window, where the cut flowers gave up their color in a month I can't recall, I wish the moths no ill. I finger the holes they made in their service to hunger, and I say to myself, it's all down to pattern, a shifting pattern, a thread of wool raveling into a thread of moth, the moth's wings, the stitchwork of the hand that knits us all, the hand itself, a stitch along a seam my mind unravels attempting to recall. So I ponder the sweater, its genesis, its journey, the unseen influence of the bodies that bore it unto the spinner's loom and the bodies that bought it and wore it before me. And I thank the goats and I thank the grass. And I thank the knitter whose brow furrowed over the intelligent design, roomy in the shoulders where my joints tend to complain. And I thank the moths for their generosity, leaving plenty of forest green cashmere to keep me warm. I thank until I run out of things to thank, and the candle burns low, and the whiskey disappears, and the night calls me down. I take off the sweater and leave it, hanging uncovered in the closet, quietly inviting the moths to come, to settle, to unhinge their mouths, and let the earth knit their soft bodies again. Here's my sweater. Love it. It's amazing. The moths love it too. We share it. The next poem is an introduction to a series of poems about family, about wanting children, not having them, marriage, its difficulties, and trying to be in love. Family. At night, when Addie sniffs the snow for deer, and I sniff the smoke from the neighbor's chimney for understanding, I think the stars out there are in here, under my ribs, which are no longer mine, but the body of some great heaving that holds us together. The one we were before the Big Bang and still are, radiating the universe in the aftermath of birth, entropy, loss, the slow effervescence of heat, leaking toward a winter in which all hearts and stars go dark. Dark, where the light begins. When it began, the sun was a mote in its beam, and us a blip in its mote, and yet here we are, devastating a beautiful planet, looking for reasons to acknowledge our destruction and the inevitability of undoing it, and still somehow concluding that the correct response is love, which may include deciding not to have children, the thing I wanted most in this world. One brush paints, the other longs for the hand. This is a serial poem, and this is part 1. All day I watched the wind in the meadow, a paintbrush collecting pollen. It dipped and swirled, then died down, retreating to the inner world to paint children. I'll carry my baskets and collect the apples from under the trees in the fall. 2. The wind kept running out of pigment and coming back for more. I sat there all day waiting, but though I felt it brushing alongside, I never felt its bristles in me. I knew why, but I didn't want to believe. 3. I could no more impregnate the orchard than I could my wife, whom I told of the brush and my day in the meadow watching it. Her face aged 5 years as she said, "There are too many of us already." I nodded. She believed this wholeheartedly, and I thought imitation would teach me to be a believer too. Mood. Entering adulthood, off to college, hiding the fact that I hadn't graduated high school, heartbroken and nursing it at the end of a bottle, a blunt, ecstasy, anything but needles or crack. I didn't want fame or money, had hardly any notion of success. I wanted to understand the way everything fit, do what I could to help the damned. 20 years later, and I can't even understand myself, my wife, or how to help us. I know what success is, and I might want it. I play favorites with my pets. Money laughs at how poor I am. I laugh at how rich I am without it. Both of us are liars. Both of us need a little of what the other has. Fame, though, fuck it. All that fake friendly conversation, keep that poison away from me, toss it in the dumpster. And if the rats find something gnaw-worthy in it, good for them, good for them. All right, we're almost there. Next one is called Slowly My Ghost Brightens, and it's for Liesel Mueller. Every 13th night, the dark tells me I'm not ready to die, and my ghost appears as if he begs to differ. He looks a little more lively each time he comes to visit. We sit like old friends who have said too much already. He never speaks, but I can tell by the quiver of his lips that his inner life is rich with worlds I'll never fathom. I'm looking forward to the day when the last grain of sand slips from my hourglass into him and me with it. I tell him so when he blinks, one lumen brighter than before. All right, next one is the last poem, and it's called A Walk in the Woods, and it's another walking poem with Addie. Addie has a little rush in her step as we enter the woods. She isn't alone. Fall feels like someone has stuck his hand in and snipped out my soul. I mean, the hand has come out wearing the most exquisite glove the weather has to offer and is waving everywhere at me in God colors and golds. But there's something missing, the chill within, emptiness calling my soul back. I'm not sure it should listen, at least not yet. I'm trying to unlearn the rhythms of the city. Maybe I can't, but already the woods feel like home. Humans were never a species I was given to understand. My kind have rough barks, trunks, and a desire to hold steady, which may be a function of how poorly my legs work. Then again, does any species understand itself? That's a question for the ether, not the ear. In the forest, the walls of my mind come down and the thoughts stumble out of their tortured apartments to think. The world is spacious after all. My arboreal friends are busy perfecting the 7,000 kinds of quiet. It's conversational, not shushes, but whispers that spill from branch to branch, the secrets of the earth. These secrets, to know them is to live them. They spin the way a conductor moves his hand, and the trees are full of conductors. Every time I look up into a canopy, I see a mind at work. Whose, though? Did the trees conjure birdsong, or did the birds sing the trees up and around them? Or did they meet in the middle, tree song finding an outlet in feathered throats? At some point, the birds lift up in unison and flock out of sight. The leaves flap and fall like waves upon the water. The estuary of the mind gives way to the amniotic ocean it inhabits, and the sensation is no longer one of walking. It's one of being walked. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this reading tonight, and I hope you're drinking something good. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.